Hey everybody, welcome back to Gideon Stuff. Today we're taking a look at the Tuyaknife Cebu. This is a pretty awesome knife. I'm excited about this review. Before we get into that, this knife was designed by Michael Atorma. And as far as I can tell, I can only find one other knife designed by him that's also a Tuyaknife. That's the Tuyaknife, which looks like a pretty cool knife. I'd never heard of it until I started doing a little bit of research for this. And speaking of research, let's talk about the name of this knife, the Cebu. What is Cebu? I thought I knew. So the whole time I was carrying this knife, I just assumed that it was named after the cow species, the Cebu cow. And so before I was going to sit down and film this review, I decided to do a little bit of research and stuff, see if I could maybe find out why the designer decided to name this knife the way he did. And number one, I realized that the more correct term for the cow that I thought this was named for is Zebu, with a Z, Z-E-B-U, instead of C-E-B-U. This is a cow that's native to Asia. It's Bos indicus. And I was always familiar with them, but I always thought it was Cebu. And doing research, I found that Cebu, I guess, is the Spanish form of Zebu, which maybe that's why I knew it as Cebu. But you know, I could have sworn that I saw like a VeggieTales song when I was a kid about Cebu. It's been driving me nuts. Maybe this was named after the cow. Maybe it was named after the province of Cebu, which is a territory in the Philippines. I don't know, but Tuyaknife's Cebu. You know what? I'm just gonna keep assuming that it's the Indian cow species. So there we go. All right, with that tangent out of the way, let's go ahead and start this review proper with some blade length measurements. This is a big knife. This is not a small boy. Our sharpened edge is coming in here just a hair over 3 1/4 inches. Our full blade length, let's measure to the closest spot on the scale, just a smidge over 3 3/4 inches. Definitely on the larger side. Let's go ahead and get out our size comparison knives, starting us off, as always, with the rats. There's the one, and here's R2-D2. So yeah, very similar in overall length to the Rat 1. This is a big knife. And I feel like I've said this before, but sometimes I forget how big the Rat 1 is. The Rat 1 is undoubtedly a large knife, but it's almost an XL knife. It's pretty big. Next up, here's our Spyderco PM2 and our Benchmade bug out. Cebu, closer in size to the PM2, but it is a little bit larger even then. Let's go ahead and bring out our Civivis. Here's the Praxis. And here's our Elementum. Yeah, the Cebu is a rather large knife. Alrighty, materials. Well, we have a D2 Wharncliffe blade. As you can see right there, marked D2. G10 scales that are contoured. And then we have a titanium backspacer, titanium clip, and titanium pivot collars. And actually, do we have titanium hardware? I can't tell if that's the scale or the, you know what? I need to find a magnet or something. But those are our materials. I'll find out whether or not these are titanium. Let's go ahead and go do some cutting. Alrighty, guys. You ready to do some review cutting? I sure am. We're talking about the Tuyaknife's Cebu. I know, finally. And on that note, guys, I really appreciate how patient you are with me. I know I don't upload nearly as frequently as a lot of the other knife tubers, and you guys know why. I'm just busy and stuff, but I really appreciate that you guys are so patient with me. I mean, I unboxed this back in January. This is first week of April that I'm finally getting around to filming the review cutting, and it'll probably be second week of April when you guys see this, because I'm honestly really far behind on content. But yeah, I appreciate the patience. So let's go ahead and talk about this knife. Let's start off with that action. Really spectacular action You got the blade hole and the flipper tab. They all work great. So drop shutty, it feels like it's loose, but it's not. This thing is, okay, maybe there's a little bit of wiggle now, but that's after I've been using it for a while. But yeah, stupendously good action. And in fact, it's got a flathead pivot, so I can adjust it right now with, let me grab a flathead out of my truck. You know, I really appreciate stuff like this because I may not always have Torx bits with me, but very rarely am I somewhere where I don't have something that can act as a flathead screwdriver. So let's see how that changed the action. Not really at all. Still amazingly smooth. Great action. Great action. Let's start with the ergonomics. This is a big knife. You've got a lot of room on this handle here. Contour G10 scales. This thing feels great in the hand. You have a kind of wide, flat titanium clip. Disappears in the hand. So comfortable. You can choke up into this choil. The jimping here is actually really nice. It's got great texture. I do wish it went further along the blade, but, you know, it works right here. I just kind of wish I could still be on that jimping when I'm choked up. Great ergonomics. Absolutely fantastic. Let's go ahead and talk about that carry. Let's tilt down here to ye old crotch cam. This titanium milled clip works great. No problems whatsoever. And even though this is a big knife, it's not as heavy as, you know, a knife of its size could be. Disappears in the pocket really nicely. You've got enough room to kind of move around with it in there. Yeah, carry is really nice. Unfortunately, it is right side only. Sorry, lefties. All right, let's go ahead and break some stuff down. And I've actually got a new cardboard victim. This blew into my yard a couple weeks ago. And so I've been saving it in the garage and stuff, waiting for a chance to come and do some review cutting, which is today. So I think we're just gonna break down this box, and that'll be our cardboard cutting. Let's get this tape on the bottom. Guess we'll back it up so you guys can see everything. I mean, I know how exciting it is to watch tape being cut. Let's see. Let's just cut it into strips first, and then we'll take off any other pieces I think need to come off. The blade here is D2 steel, by the way. Whoa! Almost fell on a gopher hole. Wharncliffe blade, so we're going to be getting into these long cuts really nicely. You know, I'm going to make a video about this, but what you saw there is something kind of interesting. You saw the choil kept getting caught. And that's because for making these long cuts, you know, this is more than 2 feet long, right? So this length here is a little bit longer than my arm. And so using this knife, I want to get as much reach as possible. And so I'm holding it back here. I'm really extending it out, and I'm trying to make that long cut. And that choil kept getting in the cut. Now, if I put my finger in there, it kind of helps it, but this is not a great grip for going long, right? If I want to maximize my reach, I'm not going to be doing this. And so,
And I also just cut myself on the edge here, like a dumbass. So, yeah, we're going to talk about that later. The choil, though, I guess is nice for shorter powered cuts, kind of like that. But, yeah, for those long cuts, I really want to be maximizing my reach. And I can't really do that. And this is a knife that I think would be really awesome to get a huge amount of usable cutting edge out of. This is a big knife, lots of edge, and for those big long cuts, that would have been really nice. That sounds like I'm really ragging on it, but I'm not. This is an awesome knife. All right, let's go ahead and do some utility cuts. Actually, let's get some more cuts like this, just so you guys can see. Choil again. Very easy to get control over this tip and very easy to control this blade overall, even though it's a, you know, very large blade. So, big fan of that. Making a big old mess here. Get over there in my trash pile. All right, let's go ahead and grab our rope. Shout out to this huge rhyolite boulder I cracked open the other day that's been holding down our cardboard here in the back while I drove out here today. Got all kinds of glass and secondary quartz crystallization and also some big old sanitine crystals in the matrix of the rhyolite itself. Pretty cool rock. All right. Very nice, very nice. Now, like most knives that have a straight edge, this is probably not going to do very well just crunching down through this rope. So, let's go ahead and see what that does. Let's see if I can, what it's like when I get off the table. Very nice. So a lot of the reason that Wharncliffe knives don't do good in this test is just because they don't get down on a table really nicely. But when I take it to the edge where I can get off the table, they typically do very well. This one did very well. So big fan of that. Love to see it. All right, pool noodle time. We have a new pool noodle. This is going to be the first ever cut on this pool noodle. So, special day, Tuyaknife Cebu breaking in the new pool noodle for us. Woo! Oh! Guys, that felt beautiful. Look how thin that is. We did mess up a little bit towards the tip. Maybe that tip is a little bit duller than the rest of the knife. Look at that. Ooh, that felt great. Absolutely fantastic. This knife is one heck of a performer. There's some good looks at it for you. Yeah, that's a pretty good looking knife too. That's pretty sexy. All right, let's go ahead and get back to the table. Oh, that was lame. There we go.
Alrighty guys, let's get into what I'm liking and not liking about the Tuyaknife Cebu. First of all, the thing that stuck out to me immediately about this knife from the unboxing was the action. This knife has a ridiculously smooth action. It is basically drop shot. I even have it tightened down a little bit more than it needs to be right now. Great detent. All the different opening methods work well. You got the flipper tab. You have the blade hole. You can thumb flick it. You can reverse flick it. They all work really nicely. Access to the lock bar is great. And yeah, it just glides shut. Again, I'm not someone that's really a fan of completely drop shut actions. I like more of a controlled, smooth descent. So I have this tightened down more than it needs to be, but I can loosen it up and it will still be really solid. So let's take that back just a little. No blade plate. I think I can even back it out a little bit more. And you see here that they have a flathead screw for the pivot. I think that's really cool. I appreciate that. Makes it very easy to adjust. And holy cow. And no blade play. Up, down, side to side, nothing. Nothing. And look at that. That's ridiculous. Again, just my personal taste. I like my knife to close a little bit slower, so I tighten it down about to there. But I mean, that's still just amazing, amazing action. Definitely a very high quality feeling action, and that's the first thing that I noticed about this knife. And it is definitely really, really impressive. But this knife is impressive in a lot of ways. So moving on, I think the ergonomics on this knife are superb. You can see here that the scales are contoured, and this is a pretty thick knife. Let's bring out the PM2 real quick, and let's just compare the thickness on these two knives. It is quite a bit thicker than a PM2. It's a chunky boy, but what that gives you is a great hand-feeling grip. This is just super comfortable. The G10 is very smooth. I love the way they've done this G10, both in terms of ergonomics and just aesthetics. It has kind of what I'd call the wood grain G10, where you can kind of see the pattern. Not as clearly as in some, but I think it looks really, really nice. All the edges are chamfered and knocked down. There's nothing sharp on this handle. It's just exceptionally well done, well thought out. It kind of has a palm swell here. The handle goes from thinner to thicker and then thinner again. That's excellent. Almost feels like a fixed blade in your hand. It doesn't really feel like a folding knife, which is really, really cool. The clip disappears. That's one benefit of titanium milled clips over fold over deep carry clips, is sometimes fold over clips poke you in your hand and they can get in the way of your ergonomics. This clip is really, really nice. It just disappears. I love it. You do have a full-size finger choil that you can choke up into for detail work. This grip is also very, very comfortable. We'll talk more about the choil here in a little bit, but definitely it is there. And the ergonomics on this knife was something that was obviously given a lot of care while this knife was being designed. Moving on to the blade, this is a flat grind Wharncliffe blade, completely straight edge. Great. Let's see what's something. Yeah, I've got this laying here. Very nice straight edge. This is going to be great for utility cuts, obviously. This is going to be a really powerful slicer. This is a very, very good blade shape for just general day-to-day tasks. It also kind of cants upward a little bit, the angle of the blade, not the edge itself. The edge itself, again, is perfectly straight, but the blade itself kind of cants upwards, and that gives you kind of a claw-like motion. So if you're poking into something, it's really, really useful. You saw in the cutting footage, breaking down that big box, this is a great angle for you to stab into a material and then drag your cut towards yourself. So yeah, as far as functionality goes, the blade performs really, really well. It's nice and thin behind the edge, but because it is a flat grind, you do have a little bit of robustness. So you can, like, I would be very comfortable using this knife a little bit harder than some pocket knives. The blade stock is also relatively thick. I mean, let's compare it to the Praxis here. You can see, yeah, that blade stock is fairly robust. Definitely a knife that can take, you know, a little bit of a beating. So I think that's really, really cool. Next up, this knife does feel classy. I love the titanium accents. This black on blue looks really, really nice. You guys know me, I'm a sucker for pivot collars. I think pivot collars are just a super easy way to class a knife up. And yeah, these look really, really nice. Stop pin is nice and big, and it's collared by the blade. Again, something that's giving you a feeling of a very robust, you know, maybe verging on heavy duty folding knife. You got a lanyard hole here in the back spacer. I actually think this is a pretty nice little lanyard hole. It's pretty unobtrusive. It's sunk into the scales a little bit, so if you're a lanyard person, you've got it. And like for me, my hands are pretty medium size. the lanyard wouldn't be in the way of my hand if I was holding this, but even if you had bigger hands, I think it'd be pretty easy to get around. Already mentioned access to the lock bar is great. I don't think I mentioned this when I was talking about the ergonomics, but I do like that the liners are inset into the scales. Again, another easy way to make a knife feel very classy. Centering and everything, perfect. The sharpness, when I got it, was really, really good. It is still pretty sharp. It's been holding an edge decently well. I have stropped it a couple of times on my work sharp, but I haven't like sharpened it. So the D2 seems to be holding up fairly well. I'm pretty impressed with that. The clip itself works great. As far as carry on this knife goes, it's not a lightweight knife, but for a knife of its size, it definitely could be a lot worse. The clip, I think this is a great titanium milled clip. It goes in and out of the pocket really nicely, slides good on this G10. Yeah, pretty nice to carry if you don't mind how thick it is, which I understand some people will, but there you go. All right, let's go ahead and get into some of my complaints. Number one, I'm not the biggest fan of the finish on the blade here. It is a bead blast. It's not like as disgusting as Civivi's bead blast that they would do, but it's a bead blast. I don't like it all that much. The inside of this hole is chamfered, which is fine for the reverse flick. It can make the thumb flick a little bit trickier just because it's kind of slippery, but very, very minor complaint. Another very minor complaint, these screws kind of sit proud of the scales. Also, I don't know if these screws are, I don't think these screws are titanium, but they are blue to match everything else. But they do sit proud of the scales. Not a huge deal, but you know, I kind of would like to see those flush. The clip is not reversible. Sorry, lefties, that is a shame. The jimping actually has a really, really nice texture. And when I'm back here, it lands in a good spot. I really wish they would have continued the jimping a lot further down the blade, though, to give your thumb a place to rest when you're choked up in that choil. This is one of my biggest gripes with a lot of knives, is that the jimping, very few knives put enough jimping on the spine. If you're going to put jimping, make sure you put it far enough along the blade where it's actually usable. And if you don't want to do that, just don't put jimping at all. I'm someone who loves jimping, right? I know some people are not the hugest jimping fans, and so I think sometimes companies try to strike a balance between the two. Don't. Choose one or the other. I'm begging of you. Choose one or the other. Again, the texture of this jimping is really nice. I really do like the texture. Nice and grippy without being painful. But man, they should have extended it quite a bit further. It really needed it. And let's talk about that choil. I'm probably going to be making a video talking about this more in depth, but I have gotten to the point where I just don't really like big choils on my full-size knives like this. When I was breaking down cardboard with this knife, like, one of the first things I thought of with this knife was, oh, this is going to be excellent for breaking down tons and tons of cardboard. You know, it's got this Wharncliffe blade, going to be great for long cuts. But I kept getting caught in the choil because when you're making these long power cuts, you're back here. You want as much leverage as possible. You're not up here working, you know, like you're doing detail cut. I mean, you can do that if you're like pushing straight down. But if you're making long cuts, you want to maximize your reach. And I would just keep getting material caught in here. And I think I would have much preferred if they had just brought that edge all the way back to here, giving me almost 4 inches of sharpened edge. I think that would have been great. Again, this is a very specific complaint to me, but it's something I have started to realize that I just am not the greatest fan of big choils on these big knives. Again, I'll make a full video talking about that, but that's one thing I noticed. One thing I should have said that is actually good is that their sharpening choil is excellent. I mean, there's a plunge grind. Yeah, you've got tons and tons of life to sharpen off this, so that's good. And the next negative is the price. These are about 90 bucks. They're sold out on Blade HQ, but you can find these on Y Mountain Knives. D2 Titanium G10. That price does seem a little bit high to me. However, this knife definitely does feel more premium and a little more special than a Civivi or a CJRB that, you know, in the same materials. Now, that being said, the real question is, would I buy this knife? I should have said this at the beginning of this video, but this knife was sent into the channel by Old Tonto Guy, who's a channel member. Thank you to him so much for sending this knife for me to check out. Because this is a knife that I had seen several times online, and I kind of thought it was a good-looking knife. I kind of thought it was, you know, attractive. It was something I was interested in. But, you know, I saw that it was D2 and G10, and it was 88 bucks. And I was like, ugh, you know, that's a little bit steep. And so I never purchased it. But now that I have it in hand, I can definitely say that it does feel like a very premium knife. It feels like more than the sum of its parts on paper. Again, it feels more special than a Civivi or CJRB in the same materials. Would I pay 90 bucks for it though? I don't know. Again, this is a really cool knife. I really do like this knife. And it's a knife that I'm definitely going to give this knife a recommend. Especially if you can find it on sale. But to me, this knife feels more like even with the superb action, even with the titanium accents and the contoured scales, this knife to me feels more like a $75 knife than a $90 knife. So, final conclusions. This is an awesome knife. If you have one, I'm sure you love it. If you're looking at getting one, if you can find it on sale, that would be awesome. But at its current market value, it is still a good knife. It's an amazing knife. I'm going to give it a soft recommend, right? It is a little bit overpriced in my opinion. I'm going to give it a soft recommend. If you find it on sale for 75 bucks or something like that, definitely jump on it. I don't think you'll regret it. This is an exceptionally cool knife, and I like it a whole lot. So that's going to be it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, comment below, and subscribe. Quick shout out to my channel members at the cowboy level. They're on the screen. I really appreciate everything they do for the channel. If you want to become a channel member, there is a blue button below this video. Feel free to click that. In other news with channel members, I've been teasing for a while that we're going to be doing a giveaway soon. We're almost at that 8 members mark, and we will be doing a pretty awesome giveaway. So there's a little bit of incentive. Nudge, nudge, hint, hint. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Adios.